Hey there, Prairie Plant Girl here. Today I'm going to be sowing Mimulus, Lobelia, and Dusty Miller. So Dusty Miller, I want to get started now because it's a great plant to have outside when the weather's a little bit cooler, and it can actually take a little bit of frost. So it's a great one to get going and hopefully have nice plants so I can put out for some spring plantings even before my average last frost. Lobelia and Mimulus are a little more frost tender. I find Lobelia likes a little bit of cooler weather. Mimulus certainly doesn't, but they both need to be started this early anyways, so we'll get them started together. I have White Lady and Crystal Palace Lobelia. So that's White Lady is white flowers obviously, and Crystal Palace is kind of a bluey purple, just a really pretty tone. I really like to have both of these. They're a good little kind of filler plant. You know, when you think about making an arrangement in a basket or a flower pot, and you want a filler, a spiller, and a thriller. These are kind of that filler fluff that's going to just really cover up the stems of anything longer or taller and give you that nice kind of airiness in the around the edges and center of your container. They do like to have quite a bit of moisture. They'll really pout if you don't keep them well watered. I mean, they don't want to be boggy, but they want to be well watered. And you'll start to see they'll really get droopy. If they're left for too long and get completely dried out, they usually won't recover from that. But they are a beautiful plant if you can keep them nice and well watered. They also like kind of a part sun area. I find they can take a little bit more sun, especially if it's like morning sun, but they don't want to be cooked again. They don't want that super strong heat drying time like hot afternoon sun will give them. But Lobelia to me is one of my favorites I like to have around, and it's pretty easy to grow from seed. So you can easily plant a bunch of pots and have lots of filler with them. Mimulus is just a really sweet little flower, and this is kind of an all-purpose plant, and I don't think it gets enough notice in the plant world. This one is called Magic Mix, and you might know Mimulus as a monkey flower. They have just a cute little, almost like a face to them. They're bright cherry plants, lots of like bright colors, a lot of oranges, yellows, reds, and they can take like sun to shade conditions. They prefer a nice wet boggy area. So again, they don't want to dry out. I don't keep them completely bogged, but I do keep them quite moist. These are great though for planters that maybe get too much moisture, or if you have an area in your yard that holds a lot of moisture after rains and that, these are a great spot for that. And I like them in, some of my pots don't have great drainage, or they're in areas where I don't want to have a lot of drainage. The Mimulus is a good plant to put there because even if you overwater it, it's still going to look great. I don't know if I mentioned, they don't like any cold weather at all, but they just need to be started quite early to get going, so start them today. And then you have that Dusty Miller, which is just it's really grown for its foliage in warmer climates, and I think it's like something like zone 8 and warmer. They're actually, most Dusty Miller I believe are perennial, and they get I think a yellow flower on them, but here they're just grown as an annual, and I don't think I've ever seen flowers on the Dusty Miller. But again, they're a great kind of filler plant. They can be a focal in a planter if you want, because they can get a little bit taller, but it's going to be a more subdued focal. It's not going to be that bright hit you in the face flowering plant or like a coleus or something. These are just like a real silvery blue foliage. It has kind of a fuzziness to it, and I would use it more as a background kind of filler plant just to make the other plants shine and pop. This one can take a little bit more dry conditions, but it does prefer regular watering. And again, this is kind of a part shade, part sun plant. So that's like around your like 4 to 6 hours of sun a day. Or if you're going to have more sun for them, I find the morning sun is better. But if you're having midday sun, then 4 to 6 hours is where you want to sit. Afternoon sun, which tends to be hotter and more intense, you want to have more, closer to that 4 hours. So that's what it means. So, you know, sometimes those light recommendations can be confusing if you're not sure. So I just have my tags that I've made up here, get my seeds out. So I'm going to put the Dusty Miller in this tray. It's a 12 pack. They grow once they get going, grow pretty quickly, so I may need to bump them up before it's time to put them out, and that'll help them to grow a bigger, stronger plant, because I want to put them out early anyways. But this is a good way to get them started. And if I remember, this is actually pelleted seed from last year, so I may have to sow them a bit thicker, because sometimes pelleted seed doesn't last from year to year really well. But we'll deal with that in a minute. The Lobelia and the Mimulus I'm going to put in this big tray here. I think I will probably do about 18 of the Mimulus. Each of these, like this is 36, this is a 72 cell tray here. So I think I'll do about 18 of the Mimulus, and that'll leave me, what, 24-ish, so about 2 dozen each of the Lobelia. I might go, if I have enough Mimulus, I might go to 24 and 24 and 24 for each of these plants. So the Mimulus, Lobelia. I'm going to put them all in the same tray though, because they want kind of similar conditions. So both the Mimulus and the Lobelia want a warm, like around 21-degree place to get started. And then once they get to that 3 to 4 leaf stage, they actually want a cooler space. So they want around 15 to 17 degree. And those are in Celsius. I'll put the translations on the screen for you. But so they want similar conditions. So I've put them in the same tray, and they can grow together until they need to be bumped up or potted out. So I'm just going to fill my trays with soil, and then we'll be able to get planting. This planting mix I just mixed up before I came out to the greenhouse here. It is a mixture of peat moss, perlite, and vermiculite. So approximately 3 parts of the peat moss to 1 part each of the vermiculite and perlite. And that's just what I find works well for me for starting my seeds. You could also buy just a standard seed starting mix. It's just if you start a lot from seed, it's a little less expensive to purchase the items separately and just make your own. So I'm just going to give these each a gentle little tap down, just to make sure that there's no air pockets and the soil's not just going to sink as soon as they get watered. This mix is also nice and moist right now. So let's start with the Mimulus, and then I'll know how much I have in here. This is a new package, and I think it says, what does it say, 25 seeds. So yeah, I should be able to do 4 rows in here of the Mimulus, and that'll give me lots. So, wow, it does not look like 24. Little tiny pelleted seed in there. So, oh, there's some stuck in the lid, maybe that's why. So get my little tag out, and we'll start at this end here. These want to be put down about 1/4 of an inch, so I'm just going to go and just put a little divot in each of these planting spaces. That'll just be for the seed to sit in, to give me that 1/4 inch. Now let's try and get these seeds out of here without spilling what's on the lid. I think sometimes with pelleted seed, it's kind of almost staticky. So I don't know if you can see those in there. They're stuck in there. So I'm just going to put a little dribble of moisture here. Wet the end of this skewer. And then I should be able to pick these up out of here. There. You can see that there. And then I can just stick it down in the soil. Probably the easiest way to get them out of there. There, I got them all out of there. So this is, if you have really small finicky seed, this is a great way, is just to get a toothpick or a skewer or something. It's a little bit wet on the end, and you may need to re-wet it. These are pretty staticky actually. I don't think they even need the moisture on there, but they're just popping right onto it. But it just can make it easier to handle instead of putting several seeds in each spot. So if you want to be able to really be precise with your seeding, It's just a great little trick to help you. I like when they make these pelleted seeds a bright color, because then it's easy to see where those little seeds are. Sometimes they're kind of a tan color, and then I find it hard to see where I put the seeds sometimes. But the reason they're pelleted is usually quite often because it's a small seed. It just makes it easier to handle, and it can help to hold the moisture around and help them to germinate better if they're a plant that has difficulty with that. Oh, there was more than 25 seeds in there, because that's 24 already. So we'll do, looks like I have enough to do one more row. So I will do one more row of these, because being this pelleted seed doesn't always last. That's the one downside of it. I don't have the little, this pelleted seed doesn't last from year to year as well as non-pelleted seed. It's not always as viable after the first year. So yeah, I had 5 extra seeds in there. That's nice. I'm gonna make sure I put a tag here so I don't forget which. So now I just want to go over and cover, kind of fill in those holes. I'll make sure I don't have big chunks like this as a kind of a chunky bit of peat moss. The seeds might not push through, so we don't want to have that there. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through. This might be a little bit thick on some of these, but I'll just get them that little covering. Same mix I used to fill the trays is all I'm covering the seeds with. And they should all have good contact with the soil. So that's all I need to do with those. I've got them covered with their 1/4 inch of soil. I will come through after when I've got this whole tray seeded, and I'll put a little bit of fine vermiculite over the whole tray, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. So what did I put in here? Crystal Palace. So let's get the Crystal Palace Lobelia out. And again, these are very tiny seeds. Like, these are almost dust. So much more difficult to work with. So with a seed like this, you can again do the little trick with your skewer, but when they're so tiny like this, it can be difficult to even know if you've gotten any off your skewer and into the soil, or if it's just stuck on there. So I tend to just take it and just kind of do a little rub between my fingers, and then I can usually see some seeds fall out of that little pinch onto the soil, and then I know I've gotten some in there. So I'm just going to do 3 rows of the blue. I really like the blue, but I find white is more versatile in the garden. So if I'm going to do more of one, it's going to be the white. So I'll put the white tag in here, and that's all you need to do with the lobelia. It doesn't need to be covered, just wants to be on the soil. And it does say to press it into the soil, but I find with something that fine, I don't really want to be pressing it. I might wind up picking most of it back up on my hands, so I'll just spray over it with a spray bottle after, and that should get it back up into the soil enough to have that contact. So here's the white, and there's more in this one. I think these were packs from last year. I can't remember, but so hopefully you can see there. I'm just sprinkling, and I'm not worried about having just a small amount. Lobelia is fine to have kind of crowded. In fact, it looks better. I don't think you want just a single plant in a cell. You kind of want, they're very fine wispy plants. You kind of want them to have some friends in the same cell all growing out together. And I can always rip these in half as they get bigger and pot them up, plant them up, and they'll do fine that way to just grow them like that. So I'm just going to put all of that in there. And now, like I said, I'm going to put this vermiculite. So it's just a really fine vermiculite. And all that does is it just helps to hold some moisture at the soil surface. And it will also take up, if there's too much moisture for some reason, it'll take that up, and it doesn't hurt these seeds that want to be exposed to light. It doesn't hurt them at all to have this on there. I find it also helps, the vermiculite changes color when you water it, so it can also be an easier guide sometimes than just looking at the soil moisture color to know if you need to water before your seeds have germinated. So when you keep the moisture under control in your seedling area, it helps to also keep things like fungus gnats and damping off from becoming an issue. If you're not familiar with damping off, it's a fungal disease, and you'll have beautiful seedlings come up and they're looking nice, and then they just kind of usually brown at the bottom, like near the soil level, and they just fall over. They look like someone just went and pinched them all at the base, and they all just fall over and they're dead. And that's usually, more times than not, caused by too much moisture. And something that can really help with that is just having good air circulation. As soon as your plants have germinated, make sure you have some sort of a fan or air movement going in your plant room for kind of while you have the plant lights on. If you're using grow lights, or like, you know, 10 hours or so a day, just have some air moving. It doesn't have to be blowing directly on the seedlings. That can be hard on young seedlings, but you need that air movement in the room, just because that stale air is what can kind of encourage fungus and things to start developing on your seed trays. And again, you want to make sure that you're only watering when they need to be watered and not keeping them soggy and boggy. So I am giving this a nice spray down right now. Again, I want to make sure that that lobelia has good contact, all those seeds have good contact with the soil, because I didn't actually press them into the soil like it said. And now they're good to go. So I'm just going to be putting a humidity dome on this tray, and these are going to be going inside. They won't be staying out here. It's still, I don't know if you can tell, the windows are all frosted behind me. It's still much too cold outside for me to be starting seeds here in Saskatchewan out in my greenhouse. So they'll be going inside my house. I have a room set up with racks and lights on it, and that's where they'll go. And like I said, once they're at that 3 to 4 leaf stage, this tray is going to have to go down like on the floor, or maybe even out in my garage under lights, so that it can have those cooler temperatures that it wants. We'll move these out of the way and we'll get the Dusty Miller done. Okay, so here's our tray of Dusty Miller. Just like that. And let's see, what does it say again? Light is required for germination, so we just want to set these on the soil surface. And again, these come in a vial, and like I said, I'm pretty sure this was from last year, these seeds. These are from Stems Flower Farm. It's a Canadian company, and the other two were from T&T Seeds, which is TT Seeds if you're ordering online. I think I have enough here. I'm hoping that I can put a few out, a few in each cell here, because I just don't know how viable these seeds still are. I think I will go with the, oops, I just knocked that one through my hand. I need more moisture here. I will go with that trick with these, and I'm going to try and place them one in each corner. They do grow into fairly large plants. Last year is the first time I think that I grew them from seed, and seems to me it took them a while to get going, but once they kind of took off, they grew quite quickly once they kind of established themselves with a good root system. So I'll plant them like this, and then they're separated. I can, if they both come up, I can rip the cell in half, lift it, rip it in half, and pot them. Looks like I have one in here already. Yeah. These almost look like grasshopper eggs. So I'm trying not to get it buried down in there. So there's still quite a few here. I'll leave these few, we'll see. Like I said, these want light to germinate, but I am still going to give them a little dusting of the vermiculite. It doesn't seem to cause issues with the seeds that need light to germinate. I think it's it's almost sparkly and lets the light kind of move around, shine around it. Give it a good spray again to make sure those seeds have good contact with the soil and the vermiculite's nice and damp. And I always get someone who asks, I do not have a link for this sprayer. It doesn't even have branding on it. I've had it for years. I purchased it at PV Mart, never seen them there, but you can buy similar looking containers to this, spray bottles to this, all over the place. Amazon, garden centers. So, and again, this will just have a humidity dome on it. And, oh, I better get my tag in there so don't forget what I planted. So close up the holes on the humidity dome. So humidity dome, and again, it'll go under my grow lights in my house. And like I said, these should grow pretty quickly for me once they kind of get themselves going. And I should be able to put these out before my average last frost. So thanks for spending some time with me in the greenhouse, sowing some seeds, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.